Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. We've got Brianna Joy Gray on. She's going to talk about pretty interesting comments from AOC that she made to Jeremy Scahill about Pelosi and Schumer and the left and all of those things. So we'll get into that with her. We've got a really interesting expert on. He just did a study about the real reason why people voted for Donald Trump this year and back in 2016. We'll dig into that. Great panel for you. But actually, some huge breaking news on the stimulus. And it was so breaking that we actually recorded this block already and had to redo it because guess what? It looks like there may actually be some direct checks in this deal that's coming together.
Yeah, so a little behind the scenes. Literally after we stopped taping, this news broke. So we're like, oh, well, I guess we got to do this all over again.
We love you guys so much.
Yes,
we wanted to make sure it was fully accurate.
That's right.
So there you go.
Torturing myself. I'm just joking. Let's throw this up there. Okay, our friend Jeff Stein over at the Washington Post reporting multiple people briefed on negotiations said another round of stimulus checks likely to be included in an imminent deal, though possibility at a lower than $1,200 approved in CARES. And I can add some of my own personal reporting here, talk to a couple people on Capitol Hill. This is what I have heard so far. We don't yet know what the number is. The number floating around the Hill offices is currently $600. But here's what's unclear. We don't yet know whether that $600 is per couple and per child. So that would mean if it was per couple, that would mean $300 on the individual level, or if it's $600 per the individual.
Yeah.
Now look, neither is ideal. Bernie and Hawley have been fighting for $1,200 for the individual,
right.
So $2,400 per couple, plus I think $600 per child. But this is still a big deal because it shows you that they broke through and got some sort of direct payment while also getting the unemployment plus up of $300 per month. I don't want to tout this like it's the greatest victory in the world. It is something, however, and it does represent that two individual senators have been capable of moving the needle so much so that they had to throw them something. Again, it's not a total victory.
Right.
Those don't exist in Washington. But when you're 2 against 98, this ain't such a bad thing.
Right. And so what was the leverage that they were able, it looks like, potentially, to have successfully wielded here? Congress needs to pass another government funding bill. And they passed one stopgap for a week last Friday that they needed unanimous consent in order to do it in a timely manner. Bernie and Hawley both agreed to go along with it last Friday, but held out. Bernie, I think in particular, was like, I don't know if I'm going to go along with this again. And they have been very forcefully calling and working together for direct payments. These people want to go home for Christmas. And Bernie explicitly said, we are going to stay here through Christmas, and I will withhold my unanimous. I mean, he wasn't clear about whether he was going to withhold his vote for unanimous consent, but he said, we will stay here through Christmas if we do not get a vote on direct payments. So they want to go home. That was the leverage they had, and it looks like, at least this morning, that moved the needle somewhat. Again, don't want to overstate, and we still don't know the details of how much money. $1,200 was already, in my view, a very moderate position and one that was supported by, of course, 80% of the country. But the fact that this deal, which looked kind of ironclad, looked a little bit set in stone. We were both skeptical that they'd be able to move this deal much at all. They were actually able to extract somewhat of a concession here, and I do think that, look, it's not enough. We will be the first to tell you that, but I do think that is incredibly significant.
Yeah, that's right. And look, it's, we can throw stones and all that, and we'll save that for later, but as long as this is moving, this is what we also know now. I'm looking at some new reporting that this is actually, the $900 billion would be tacked on to that omnibus funding bill for Friday. So this is another way, I think, of kind of calling Bernie and Hawley's bluff, being like, well, now they're going to add that direct payments to the actual government funding bill itself. This was something they'd actually ruled out previously. They said, well, just fund the government. We're not going to attach these two things together. By attaching it together and making it so that if you vote against it, you're actually voting for a government shutdown, they increase those stakes. So they're adding and throwing some payment in there, some, we don't know the amount yet. We'll tell you as soon as we learn it, but they're adding that onto the omnibus funding bill for continuing funding of the government. So that is another way, again, of upping the ante.
Right.
I do want to say, I mean, I really do think it has the potential to be a modest victory.
Yeah.
And one that absolutely would not have happened without these two men coming together and saying, we will screw up your Christmas vacation plans and unanimous consent if you do not throw something in there. Neither senator has said whether that this is enough. They're both probably if I had to guess, say it's not enough, but this is the best we can do, and at least we got something for the American people. And they would be right, which is that if you can get $300 unemployment plus up, which is a lot of money to a lot of people who are struggling, that will actually drop poverty in this country, increase rent, and so much more. And at least a modest amount in Americans' bank accounts around the holiday season.
Yeah.
We were just looking at retail numbers, which are a total disaster. And I actually used to look at some of these numbers for a living. 40% of all sales for a lot of these places comes in November and December. And we just had a drop in overall aggregate retail spending. That is an economic catastrophe for a lot of businesses.
Right. And that's the first drop in retail spending that we've seen since the initial major drop here at the beginning. So in the last 7 months, that's the first drop in retail spending we've seen, which is highly significant. Let's just put up on the screen. We prepared this graphic for you before we knew that they're going to add the payments in. We haven't seen all the details of this bill, but this was what was being floated on Capitol Hill as of yesterday that would be included in this relief legislation in addition to the direct payments in whatever amount that comes out to be. So $300 unemployment plus up for, I think it's 16 weeks that would be extended. Pandemic unemployment insurance is actually really significant. Something like 12 million Americans are relying on this expanded unemployment program that includes gig workers. So that will be extended. That was set to expire right after Christmas. It was a disaster in the making. And that's the case for a lot of these individual items. They were set to expire at the end of the year, creating this horrible financial cliff that Americans were facing down. So you have PPP extension, that's small business funding. You've got some education funding. You've got some money for vaccine distribution. COVID testing extension. Those COVID tests have been paid for. That was set to lapse. They're continuing that. Student loan forbearance also extended. Eviction moratorium extended for 1 month to get them into. Republicans objected to doing a longer moratorium, but once Joe Biden is in, he could do that unilaterally. So we'll see if he does. Some rental assistance, the numbers there is relatively small, certainly not what ultimately will be needed, but some rental assistance, and also I believe it was a 15% increase in SNAP provisioning, so people who are struggling have access to more food during this incredibly difficult time. So look, I mean, it's not ideal. They stripped down state and local. They stripped down corporate liability shield, and that's part of, by removing state and local aid, that's part of how they created enough space below the Republicans' arbitrary $1 trillion cap in order to get these direct payments into this bill. And, always kudos to Jeff Stein. He was the one who reported originally when they stripped out and put the state and local and the corporate liability shield together that potentially created an opening for this to happen because it freed up that space. So he's always so ahead of the curve on all of this and where these negotiations are heading.
Yeah, no, he saw that hole, and it seems that they might have fixed it. I got to tell you, I mean, as recently as, not that 12 hours ago, I was asking around, and people were like, nah, I don't think this is going to happen. I think this thing is dead. And so just goes to show how quick things can turn around and how much all these people want to go home for Christmas. So you hold that
whatever
up,
it takes.
You hold it over their heads, you might actually get something.
One last thought.
Yeah.
As we move forward into the next Congress, and we've been talking about, should the squad withhold their votes for Pelosi for Speaker? How's the Progressive Caucus going to handle negotiations like this? This just goes to show you, if you are willing to go to the mat, willing to shoot the hostage, willing to act a little bit crazy,
you can get something.
You can get something done. Even 2 men in the Senate were able to at least accomplish something using the powers that they have there. So, number one, do not be convinced by any of these people when they tell you they're impotent and they're powerless and there's nothing they can do. And number two, I sincerely hope that some people who want to accomplish good things for working class Americans are paying attention to what happened in these negotiations.
That's right.
All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radar, so that's next.